He told himself it would only be one night, just help, then walk away. But when a starving child reached out and touched his hand, everything he buried began to rise again. If you're drawn to quiet, powerful stories about healing, love, and second chances, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The rain started just past noon, soft at first, like a whisper over the windshield, then heavier, colder, as the sun sank behind thick gray clouds. John kept both hands on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road curling through the pine-lined edge of Southridge. The heater blew warm air into the truck's cab, but it did nothing for the chill that had settled in his chest 4 years ago and hadn't left since. He passed the gas station that hadn't changed since '97, the old grain silo leaning like it had a secret to confess, and the cracked sign for Bailey's Bakery still swinging in the wind. Same town, same ghosts, same man behind the wheel, only quieter now. Smaller. John didn't believe in signs. He didn't believe in second chances either. Not anymore. But then he saw them. A rusted sedan sat crooked on the side of the road, steam curling from beneath the hood. Beside it stood a woman, early 30s maybe, clutching 2 children to her chest beneath a threadbare coat. One of the kids, a little boy, looked unconscious. The girl, no older than 6, stared blankly into the rain. John's grip tightened on the wheel. Don't stop. He told himself that. Said it like a mantra, like a prayer. People had their own roads. He'd taken his, and his had already cost him everything. But then, just as his truck began to pass, he saw the girl's lips move. She leaned toward the woman and whispered something. The woman bent low, listening. Then the girl said it louder, barely a breath. "Mama, I can't see anymore." John hit the brakes. Not hard, not dramatically, but enough. The truck rolled to a halt 30 feet ahead. He sat there for a second, engine idling, hands frozen on the wheel. His stomach tightened. His chest burned, not from heat, from the terrible recognition of a moment he knew too well. There'd been another voice once, years ago, whispering, pain from a hospital bed. Another girl. Another hand he hadn't held tightly enough. He turned off the ignition. The rain hit his neck the second he stepped out. Cold. Sharp. He pulled up the collar of his coat and walked back toward the broken-down car. The woman turned to him slowly, cautious but not afraid. Her face was pale, soaked, but calm in a way that unsettled him. She wasn't begging. She wasn't even hopeful. She was resigned. Her eyes met his like they didn't expect much, and that hurt more than it should have. He cleared his throat. "You need help?" She nodded once. "The car died. We've been sitting here since morning." Her voice was hoarse. Not from illness, but from wear. The kind that came from long roads and longer silences. He looked at the kids. The girl's lips were bluish. The boy didn't stir. "You got a place to go?" "No." A pause, then, "Just away." John cursed under his breath. His boots shifted in the mud. He didn't want this. Not today. Not any day. He didn't want to feel that old ache in his ribs, the one that said do something, the one that had nearly destroyed him once before. But then the girl took a shaky step toward him. She slipped, and in catching herself, her small hand brushed his. It was barely a touch, a whisper of skin, but it lit up every nerve like flame. John exhaled through his nose, slow and tired. "There's a place," he muttered. "Not far. Just a few miles out. You can come in, warm up, just for the night." The woman didn't thank him. She didn't cry. She simply picked up the boy and opened the car door. "My name's Rachel," she said quietly. "This is Lily. And Sam." John nodded. "One night," he said firmly. Rachel met his gaze. "One night," she repeated. The ride back was quiet. Lily sat in the middle seat beside her mother, her small frame tucked between the folds of that worn coat. John didn't look at them. He kept his eyes on the winding road, now glistening with rain, and tried not to notice how the girl leaned into her mother's shoulder like she hadn't slept in days. His house wasn't much, a cabin tucked between the trees, the paint peeling, the porch sagging in one corner. The inside smelled faintly of wood smoke and old cedar. He'd stopped noticing. It was shelter, nothing more. He lit the fire first, dry kindling, years of muscle memory. The warmth bloomed in the small living room like breath returning after a long hold. Rachel knelt beside the fire, rubbing Sam's arms to bring color back into them. Lily wandered to the edge of the hearth, watching the flames, with a kind of reverence John hadn't seen in years. He moved to the kitchen and set a pot of soup on the stove, canned chicken and rice. Not much, but hot. When he returned with the bowls, Rachel reached for one. Her fingers brushed his. Icy. You didn't have to stop, she said, barely above a whisper. No, he answered. But I did. Lily took the soup in both hands like it was treasure. She smiled, and John saw something shift in her. The kind of smile that said she'd forgotten for just a second that the world could be cruel. Later, when the fire was low and the children asleep beneath borrowed quilts, Rachel sat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. John hovered in the doorway, unsure why he hadn't retreated to his workshop like usual. You've lived here long? She asked. A while. He didn't offer more. Rachel nodded. It's quiet here. That's the idea. Another beat of silence passed before she turned to face him. Her eyes were tired but steady. I know we're strangers, she said. I don't expect anything. I just needed a safe place. For one night. John nodded, eyes fixed on the dying fire. One night, he echoed. But part of him, the part that hadn't spoken in years, whispered something different. One night can change everything. John woke early, though sleep had barely touched him. The storm had eased sometime after midnight, but the quiet that followed was louder than the rain. It draped over the house like a question he didn't want to answer. In the kitchen, he moved with practiced silence, made coffee, stirred the fire, avoided looking toward the hallway where the guest room sat, where the three of them now slept. He told himself again, one night. That was the rule. He hadn't said it out loud to anyone before Rachel, but it was real. A boundary drawn not in ink, but in scar tissue. One night was mercy. Anything more invited memory, and memory was the enemy. Still, as he poured the coffee into a chipped mug and sipped, the silence of the house felt different. Not heavy, not hollow, not like it used to. He stared out the window. Mist clung to the trees. The porch was slick with rain. A squirrel darted across the yard, startled by nothing in particular. Behind him, he heard movement, small footsteps, lighter than adult weight, slower than a run. John turned. Lily stood at the kitchen threshold in her socks, eyes wide but not afraid. She held something behind her back, a folded piece of paper. I drew this, she said softly. Last night. She stepped forward and handed it to him. It was a simple pencil sketch, childish lines, uneven proportions, but unmistakably them. A tall man, a woman with long hair, 2 kids beside a fire, and a roof over them all. John's throat tightened. You draw a lot? He asked, trying to keep his voice even. Lily nodded. When I'm scared. He paused. Are you scared now? She looked up at him. Not today. He didn't know what to say to that. Rachel emerged not long after, hair pulled back, face pale but composed. She thanked him for the soup, for the fire, for the bed. She said they'd be gone before noon. John didn't argue, didn't encourage her to stay either. He just nodded and went outside, pretending to check the rain gutters. But from the porch, he could hear the low murmur of Rachel's voice through the open window as she got the kids dressed. She was telling them to say thank you, to be respectful, to pack what little they had. He hated how natural it sounded, like she'd done it before, like she knew how to leave places without leaving a trace. When he came back inside, they were nearly ready. Sam sat on the couch playing quietly with a wooden spoon. Rachel was tying Lily's shoes. "Do you have a car we can borrow?" she asked carefully. "Just to get to the gas station. We'll figure things out from there." John looked at her for a long second. "You don't have to go yet." Her eyes flickered. I said one night," he interrupted. "And I meant it, but the roads are still slick. You've got kids. You should at least stay through the afternoon, let them rest." Rachel hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know." She didn't push further. John turned back to the kitchen and started making sandwiches. Peanut butter and whatever else he could find. Lily asked if she could help. He handed her a butter knife and let her spread the jelly. She was terrible at it, but her giggle when the knife slipped made something break open in him. They ate together, the first time John had sat at that table with someone in years. The fourth chair, the one across from where his wife used to sit, remained empty. He didn't touch it. After lunch, Rachel helped him bring in firewood from the shed. She didn't speak much, but her presence beside him, quiet, steady, felt oddly grounding. Like she understood what silence was really for. She caught him looking at his hands, at the long, faded burn marks across his knuckles. "That from the fire?" she asked gently. He gave a short nod. "My house," he said. "Long time ago." She didn't pry, just kept stacking wood. By mid-afternoon, the clouds began to clear. Light filtered through the windows like a tentative apology. Rachel stood by the door, coat folded in her arms, ready to leave again. John knew he should let her go. That was the rule. But then Lily ran up, clutching the sketch she'd drawn, and said, "Can we stay till it gets dark? Just till then?" Rachel looked at John, waited. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out the window again, not at the sky this time, but at the hill beyond the trees, where a swing set used to stand, where laughter once lived. He looked back at them. Rachel, tired but brave. Lily, hopeful. Sam, small and quiet, clinging to the last bite of a sandwich like it was gold. He cleared his throat. "I'll make dinner," he said. Rachel blinked, caught off guard. "John, are you sure?" "No," he said honestly. "But stay anyway." That night, after the kids were asleep again, Rachel lingered by the fire. John sat across from her, hands wrapped around a mug of tea he hadn't touched. "You don't talk much," she said. "Never. Saw the point. You were kind today, that's worth saying." He didn't respond right away. Then, "I've lost people before. Being kind didn't save them." Rachel looked at the flames, quiet. "Me too." A long pause. "I'm not here to take anything from you, John," she said softly. "We'll be gone soon. But I just want you to know. This felt like home, for a moment, and I hadn't felt that in a long time." John watched her, eyes shadowed in the firelight. He didn't smile, didn't speak. But when she rose to go, he stood too. Not to stop her, just to walk with her quietly, down the hallway, as if his presence alone could make the space feel less temporary. As she closed the bedroom door, she turned. "Good night." John gave a nod. Then, alone again in the flickering light, he whispered something only the empty kitchen could hear. It's just one more night. But even he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince anymore. John didn't wake to an alarm. He hadn't set one in years. His body knew the rhythm of morning like it knew the scar on his hand. An old habit that never asked permission. He rose before the sun, lit the fire, and stepped outside, into the frozen stillness. The rain had passed, in the night, leaving a glistening coat over the yard like nature was trying to apologize for all the damage. Everything smelled like wet pine and clean air. But when he turned back toward the house, he noticed something different. The porch light was on. He never left it on. Through the window, he could see a soft glow in the kitchen. Rachel, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, heating water on the stove. Lily sat at the table, legs swinging, still in pajamas, humming something tuneless but content. It hit him harder than expected. the image of a kitchen with movement in it, a home with more than one heartbeat. He stepped in quietly, nodding toward Rachel as she turned. "You're up early," she said, offering a half smile. "I couldn't sleep." John grabbed a mug from the shelf. "Yeah, me neither." She poured hot water into 2 cups, black tea this time, and passed one to him without asking. He sipped, surprised by how easily the warmth settled into his chest. "Lily wanted to help," Rachel said, gesturing to the toast piled awkwardly on a plate. "She made 3 of them before realizing she forgot the butter." "I like it crispy," Lily chimed in proudly. John chuckled. "Looks gourmet." Lily grinned, swinging her legs harder. The sound of her laughter, real unfiltered, echoed softly against the cabin's old beams, rubbing against silence like sandpaper on stone. After breakfast, John went out to check the shed. He expected to be alone. He was almost always alone out there. But 20 minutes later, Rachel appeared, her boots muddy, holding an old broom. "You got cobwebs the size of raccoons in here," she said. "I know," he replied. "Mind if I clean a little?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Knock yourself out." They didn't talk much while they worked. She swept. He stacked wood. At one point, he handed her a nail and she held it between her teeth without asking, like she'd done it 1,000 times. He noticed her hands, small, steady, with short nails and red knuckles from the cold. There was a quiet strength in the way she moved, like a woman who had never expected help and learned not to wait for it. Something about that made him angry. Not at her, at whoever had taught her that lesson. That afternoon, they fixed the leaky roof above the porch. John held the ladder while Rachel balanced a hammer, her movements sure-footed despite the wet shingles. Lily sat below on the step, watching them with her chin in her hands, humming again. "You trust me up here?" Rachel called down. John smirked. Less by the second. She laughed, and it was the first time he'd heard her do that. Really laugh. It startled him, and stayed with him. They didn't speak of timelines, no mention of leaving, no countdown. That night after the kids went to bed, Rachel stayed behind in the living room. John sat in his usual chair by the fire, the same place he used to read every night when life still made sense. Rachel held a cup of tea in both hands. "This place is still." He nodded. "Too still most days." She looked around. "Feels like a place that used to be full." It was. A pause. Rachel looked at the photos on the wall. Only one still hung. A wedding picture, slightly faded, framed in reclaimed oak. "She was beautiful," Rachel said softly. John's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "She was the best part of me," he said. Rachel didn't reply. She just let the fire fill the space between them with its quiet rhythm. After a while, she said, "I keep waiting for the moment you ask us to leave." John didn't answer, because he didn't know if he would, or if he could anymore. Later that night, long after Rachel had gone to bed, John stayed awake by the fire. The house creaked in the wind. Somewhere outside, an owl called out, low and steady. He looked down at the drawing Lily had left on the table, the same one she'd given him earlier, now creased from being folded and unfolded again. He noticed something he hadn't before. She had drawn a tree behind the house. New, small, with just a few leaves. But it was there, centered between them all, its roots extending beneath their feet. A promise tree. Not full-grown, not ancient, but planted. And for the first time in a long time, John let his hand rest on that empty chair across from him, and he didn't move it away. The frost came early that morning. John woke to find the windows laced with silver threads, the kind of intricate, quiet beauty only cold could make. The ground outside had hardened. Even the trees looked stunned, still dripping with the last color of fall. He stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand, boots thudding against the wooden planks. The boards groaned beneath his weight. Familiar aged noises. He'd grown used to the house talking back. But now, there were other sounds. Softer ones. In the yard, Lily and Sam were bundled in mismatched scarves and coats, chasing each other through low-hanging fog. Their laughter pierced the cold like sunlight through glass. Rachel sat on the porch steps, gloved hands curled around a tin mug. She wasn't watching the kids, and not exactly. Her eyes were distant, focused on something inside her. John sat down beside her without a word. The silence between them wasn't heavy, not anymore. It was something shared. Something comfortable. "They haven't played like that in a long time," she said finally. John nodded. "Kids bounce back." Rachel smiled faintly. "You think so?" "They have to. They stayed like that for a while." Then Rachel said, almost too casually, "You ever fix that window in the bedroom? The one that doesn't close all the way?" Johnny gave a half laugh. "No one slept in that room for a long time, I noticed." He didn't say anything more, but then she added, "I could help if you want." He turned toward her. "You know how to fix windows?" "I know how to figure things out." Something in her tone made him pause. It wasn't pride. It was resignation. She'd figured out a lot of things alone, he realized, probably more than she should have had to. Later that afternoon, while the kids napped curled up together on the couch, John brought out his toolbox. Rachel followed him to the back room where the window sat crooked in its frame. They worked quietly. She held the frame steady while he replaced the latch, the two of them moving in sync without much need for words. Then, as he leaned forward to test the seal, his sleeve rolled up and Rachel caught sight of the scar. It ran the length of his forearm. Pale, jagged, years old. She didn't react at first, but she didn't look away either. "Fire?" she asked softly. John nodded, jaw tight. "Kitchen caught, gas leak, she didn't make it out." Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "You did." "Yeah," he said. That was the problem. She didn't respond with sympathy, just a long silence. Then she said, "I've got some scars too, just different kinds." John stood wiping his hands. He didn't press her, but he didn't leave either. Rachel sat on the edge of the old bed frame and took a breath. "I married young. Too young." He was charming in that way. Bad men can be. The kind that makes you feel like you're the only thing that keeps them from falling apart. John leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "At first it was small things," she continued. "Late nights, slammed doors. Then, it was more." Her fingers tightened around the hem of her sweater. "When Lily turned 4, she asked why Mommy had to sleep on the floor sometimes. That's when I packed what I could, took them, and ran." John's throat tightened, but he stayed silent. Listening. "I never told anyone the whole story. Never had the time. Or the place." She looked up at him. "I don't expect pity." "You won't get it," John said. Then after a beat, "But you'll get something better." Rachel raised an eyebrow. Space. Quiet. Coffee in the morning. She laughed, a tired, real laugh, and shook her head. "You don't make it easy to thank you, do you?" "I don't know how," John admitted. Neither of them spoke for a long time after that. The window was fixed, but something else, something less visible, had shifted back into place too. That evening, Lily came to John with another drawing. This one was more detailed. A tree, larger now, with 4 figures beneath it. But something new had been added, a 5th figure, just a shadow off to the side. "Who's that?" John asked. Lily shrugged. "I don't know yet. Maybe someone who's coming." John looked at Rachel across the room. She was setting the table, smiling softly as Sam tried to fold napkins into birds. For the first time in years, John wondered if maybe something was coming. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't something to be afraid of. That night, John stood, outside alone. The stars were sharp and clear, the air brittle with cold. But there was warmth behind him now. Real warmth. Not just firelight, but voices, movement, the faint sound of someone humming. He looked down at his hands. The scar still ran across the skin. It always would. But he wasn't hiding it anymore. Inside the house, laughter erupted. Rachel teasing Lily about bedtime. Sam joining in with sleepy protest. John didn't move. He just stood there, eyes closed, listening. The house wasn't empty tonight, and neither was he. John didn't mark the days anymore, but even he could feel when something began to shift. Not in the sky or the calendar, but inside the house. It started with the small things. Rachel began folding the laundry without asking. Lily started leaving drawings on the fridge. Sam insisted on helping stack the firewood, usually resulting in more chaos than assistance. But John let him try anyway, and John started using the fourth chair, not all the time, not every meal, but sometimes when the kids asked if he'd sit with them, or when Rachel brought out coffee in the evening and sat across from him without speaking, only sipping and breathing in sync. The silence between them had changed. It wasn't thick. With what hadn't been said, it was a place to rest. One morning, Rachel found an old bag of flour in the pantry and declared it was time to make something that smells like memory. John raised an eyebrow. "You bake?" "I survive," she said, tying her hair back with a rubber band she found on the windowsill. The kitchen filled with the scent of butter, apples, and cinnamon. Lily sang while peeling the fruit, off-key and too loud, but neither adult stopped her. John leaned against the counter, watching Rachel's hands move with confidence. Her motions were messy but sure. She didn't hesitate. "You done this before?" he asked. "Not in years. My grandmother taught me. She said food was a kind of apology we didn't know how to say out loud." John nodded slowly. He understood that. They ate the pie after dinner, sitting on the floor in the living room, plates balanced on knees, the fire snapping behind them. Sam fell asleep mid-bite. Lily dozed with her head on Rachel's lap. John watched them, the curve of Rachel's hand smoothing Lily's hair, the way the firelight kissed her cheekbones, the calm in her shoulders. It looked like family, and that terrified him. Later that night, Rachel lingered in the kitchen, washing dishes even though John told her not to. He dried them silently beside her. The quiet stretched long, but not uncomfortable. At one point, their hands touched over a spoon. Rachel froze. So did he. Not from awkwardness, but recognition. The kind that comes when two people realize all at once they are no longer strangers. She pulled away first. "Sorry." John didn't say anything. He just set the spoon down and walked out onto the porch. The air outside was sharp with cold. Stars pierced the sky like old regrets, too many to count. John stood with his hands in his pockets, heart thudding too loud. He had let them in, not just into the house, into him. That was never part of the plan. Next morning, he fixed the kitchen window without being asked, tightened the hinges, re-oiled the track. Rachel noticed but didn't comment. She only handed him coffee, and her smile said enough. That afternoon he took Lily out to the yard and showed her how to use a hammer. She held it like a sword. "No, like this," he said, guiding her small hands with his. When the nail finally went in straight, she beamed. "I'm strong." "You are," he said without thinking. "Stronger than you know." Rachel watched from the porch, arms crossed, eyes soft. Later she came out with a bag of lavender seeds. "I want to plant something," she said. "Something that'll stay." They knelt together in the dirt, clearing a patch just beneath the kitchen window. The ground was hard but not frozen. They worked in silence, hands brushing, breath visible in the fading light. John couldn't stop staring at her fingers pressing into the earth, as if she was giving something back to the world that had taken so much. That night after the kids were asleep, John sat alone in the living room. Rachel joined him. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know what this is," he said honestly. Rachel nodded. "Neither do I." But it's good, he added quietly. It is, she said. John looked down at his hands. Which means it won't last. Rachel didn't flinch. Maybe not, but don't you think it deserves to be real anyway? He looked at her for a long time. Then he said the thing he hadn't let himself say in years. I thought I couldn't feel this again. I thought I wasn't allowed to. Rachel reached across the couch. Her fingers rested on his. You don't need permission to be alive, John. And there it was. The moment. Quiet. Fragile. Real. Almost peace. The day started like any other. John rose before the light and stepped out into the biting air. A thin layer of frost coated the porch railing. He ran a hand over it, watching the crystals melt beneath his fingers, disappearing as quickly as they'd come. Inside, the fire had gone, out overnight. He restoked it in silence. Rachel joined him a few minutes later, her hair tied back, eyes sleepy but content. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. By now, the routine had become something unspoken, a kind of rhythm. Lily's humming. In the background, Sam's small feet dragging across the floor in search of toast. John fixing what was broken. Rachel tending what still breathed. It almost felt like life. Almost. It happened just after noon. John had driven into town for supplies, firewood, salt for the driveway, a few nails to mend the back steps. Southridge was quiet as always. The hardware store still smelled like sawdust and pipe tobacco. The clerk asked about the new folks staying out at his place, grinning like he already knew the answer. John didn't offer one. He never had much use for gossip, especially now. As he turned onto the road back to his cabin, he noticed it. Car, not just any car, but an out-of-state plate, parked crooked off the shoulder near the first bend in the road. Empty. Still warm. John slowed, his gut twisting. No one walked this far out without a reason. When he got back, Rachel was out front hanging laundry in the weak winter sun. Her hand stilled when she saw him. You okay? She asked. John nodded, but his eyes swept the tree line behind her. Anyone come by? She hesitated. No. Why? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked past her and into the house. The kids were napping. The windows were locked. Everything was in place. But he couldn't shake the feeling, that subtle shift in the air, like the house was holding its breath. Rachel followed him in. What is it? She asked, her voice low. There's a car out on the road, not local. No one in it. Her face paled. John didn't miss it. You know whose it is? She nodded, slowly. My husband. It was the first time she'd said the word out loud. Not ex, not was. Just husband. And it landed like a stone between them. I don't know how he found me, she whispered. I was careful. I never called anyone. John raised a hand. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Rachel's eyes filled, not with tears, but fury. No, it's not okay. He doesn't get to do this again. John stared at her. He hurt you. She nodded. And he'll hurt the kids if he can. He'll say all the right things, smile the right way. But it's poison. It always was. John looked down at his hands. What does he want? Rachel swallowed. Control. Ownership. Me. They made a plan. John would sleep near the door. The shotgun stayed within reach, though he hadn't fired it in years. Rachel gathered what little she could. Documents, spare clothes, the kids' shoes. That night they didn't eat. They sat in silence, watching the fire like it might hold the answers. I should leave, Rachel said finally. John turned toward her, jaw tight. No. If I go, he'll follow me, not them. He'll follow until he finds what he wants. That's not how this ends. Rachel's voice cracked. Then how does it end, John? You get dragged into this too? You get hurt. Again? I don't care. The words came faster than he meant them to. But he didn't take them back. Rachel looked at him. Really looked at him. You'd do that? I already am. The knock came just before dawn. 3. Short raps, not frantic, not polite, just enough to say, I know where you are. John moved to the door. Rachel stood behind him, arms around the kids who'd woken with fear in their eyes but no sound in their mouths. John opened the door. And there he was, tall, smiling, hands in his pockets like this was a reunion, not a threat. Morning, the man said. John said nothing. The man looked past him, eyes landing on Rachel. There you are. I was starting to think I'd lost you. Rachel didn't answer. I just want to talk, the man said. That's all. 5 minutes. John stepped forward, body blocking the doorway. You're done talking. The man's smile faltered. She's my wife. Not here, she's not. Silence. You going to get in the way? The man asked. I already have. They stared at each other for a long moment. 2 men, 1 house, and everything in between. Then the man stepped back. I'll be around, he said. You can't keep them forever. John didn't respond. He closed the door, locked it, turned. Rachel was trembling. She hadn't cried, but her eyes were wild with memory. John walked to her, stood still, gave her space, but she stepped into him, arms around his waist, face against his chest. She didn't speak, didn't ask for anything, but John held her, and the fire behind them burned bright. The snow came heavy that night. By morning, the yard was blanketed in white. Everything looked still, untouched. A peace that only winter could fake. John stood at the window, watching the soft fall of flakes cover every trace of the day before, except for the tire tracks. They were still there, deep, fresh, facing the house. He turned from the glass and walked back into the kitchen, where Rachel sat wrapped in a blanket nursing a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The kids were still asleep, or pretending to be. No one had spoken much since the knock. He's not gone, John said quietly. I know, Rachel replied, eyes distant. He never leaves the first time. He likes to circle, to wait, to see what fear does. John pulled on his coat. Where are you going? She asked. To fix the back door. Rachel frowned. Why? Because the front one might not hold. He spent the morning reinforcing the house, checking locks, boarding, the shed double-latching the windows. He tried to tell himself this wasn't a war, but it felt like one. Only this time he wasn't trying to survive it for himself. He was standing for someone else. And maybe that was the difference. At dusk, the silence shattered. Rachel had gone into the bedroom to help Lily brush her hair. Sam was in the living room building a tower of books and pretending it was a castle. John was restocking the firewood inside when he heard it. The back window, shattering. He moved fast. Years of muscle memory came back like instinct. He didn't think. He didn't doubt. He grabbed the old hammer off the kitchen counter, the same one he used to fix floorboards, hang shelves, build, the tiny bench out front for Lily to sit and watch the trees. Now it was a weapon. He found the man inside already. Boot prints on the kitchen tile, snow melting off his jacket, eyes wild, mouth curled in something between anger and triumph. Where are they? He snarled. John didn't answer. He stepped forward instead, placing himself squarely between the man and the hallway. I don't want to hurt you, the man said. You already have, John said calmly. You just don't know it yet. They fought. It wasn't clean. It wasn't cinematic. It was violent, clumsy, desperate. 2 men crashing into walls and furniture, the past and present colliding in the cracks between every blow. The man was stronger, younger, but John had something else. Something he hadn't had in years, someone to lose again. That made him dangerous. At one point, the man knocked John to the floor, driving a fist into his ribs, trying to reach the hallway. John saw red, saw flashes of the hospital room years ago, the 2 white walls, the 2 silent heart monitor. He heard Lily's voice behind the door. Is it over? John got up and he didn't hold back. When it ended, the man was outside in the snow, face bloodied, groaning but conscious. John had dragged him there himself. He called the sheriff, finally, told him everything. Names, dates, faces. He didn't leave anything out this time. When the lights from the cruiser appeared down the road, John walked back inside, knuckles raw, breathing hard. Rachel stood in the hallway, arms around her children, tears in her eyes. Is he gone? John said, why, for good this time. She looked at him, seeing the blood on his lip, the bruises already blooming on his jaw. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. John stepped closer, voice low, rough. Yes, I did. He looked at her, really looked at her, and said the words he'd buried under every scar in silence for the past 4 years. If I have to pay for this later, I will. But if I had to do it again, to keep you safe, to keep them safe, I'd do it every single time. Rachel broke. Not in fear, not in panic. She broke the way someone does when they realize they're no longer running. She stepped into him, into the blood and the brokenness and the beating heart beneath it all, and she whispered, then I'll stop running too. That night the house was quiet, not empty, not wounded, just quiet. John sat on the floor beside the fire. Lily curled under his arm, Sam asleep with a toy truck on his chest. Rachel rested her head against John's shoulder, one hand over his still battered hand. They didn't speak. There was no need. The stand had been made, and the house, their house, had held. The house smelled like splintered wood and cold smoke. Even after the sheriff left, after the cruiser pulled away and the back window had been boarded, John couldn't shake the sense that something had been cracked open and left that way, not just in the structure. In him. He moved slowly through the kitchen, wincing at the sharp pull in his side. His ribs were likely bruised, maybe cracked, but he'd felt worse. The cuts on his knuckles had crusted, sore and stiff. He hadn't bothered to clean them properly. Not yet. Rachel stood by the sink, staring out at the trees like she was waiting for something to step out of them. Her hands gripped the counter. Her shoulders were shaking. He walked over and set a hand on her back. Gentle, steady. She didn't flinch. That alone told him something had changed. They didn't speak much the next morning. John fixed the back window, hammering in a temporary frame. The kids helped gather shards of glass, dropping them into an old coffee tin, their small hands oddly careful. Lily kept glancing at him, her eyes solemn but unafraid. Is the bad man really gone? She asked. John crouched beside her. Yes. Forever? He hesitated. As long as it takes. She nodded. Okay. Then she reached up and took his hand, just held it. Like it was nothing, like it was everything. But the stillness didn't last. That afternoon, while John was out gathering supplies from the shed, the smell hit him first. A bitter, acidic sting. He ran. Smoke billowed from the side of the house, black and sudden. He reached the porch just as Rachel was dragging Sam and Lily out the front door, coughing, her face streaked with soot. He didn't ask questions. He ran inside. The kitchen was on fire. Not accidental. Not a flare-up. This was set. Oil poured. Near the stove, a trail to the pantry. Intentional. Precise. Meant to erase. John grabbed the old fire extinguisher, hacking through the smoke. He got most of it. Not all. The damage was done. By the time the last ember died, the walls were scorched. The cabinets melted inward, the ceiling dark with smoke. The heart of the house, the warmth they had built, now lay blackened and ruined. Outside, Rachel sat on the steps with Sam in her lap, Lily clinging to her sleeve. John knelt in the snow, panting, hands shaking. No one said a word. The silence returned. Not peaceful this time, but stunned. Hollow. Rachel's voice, when it came, was barely there. He couldn't get to us. So he tried to take the only place we were safe. John looked at the house. The walls still stood, but it didn't feel like shelter anymore. That night they didn't sleep inside. Rachel bundled the kids into blankets and they all lay together in the truck, engine running, heat humming. John stayed. Outside by the porch steps, shotgun beside him, fire poker still in his hand. He stared at the black outline of the kitchen window, now a jagged hole. His chest burned. He had let them in. He had tried to protect them. And still, someone got through. Maybe I was wrong, he thought. Maybe I don't know how to keep anyone safe anymore. Rachel stepped out just before dawn, barefoot on the frozen steps, arms crossed tight over her. "Chest, come inside," John said hoarsely. "There's nothing left inside," she whispered. He looked at her, unsure what to say, but she kept going. "When I left him, I thought I'd never find safety again. And then we found you. This house, and for a little while it felt like we had a place again." She looked toward the burned frame. "And now it's gone." "No," John said, voice cracking. "Not gone, just hurt." Rachel looked at him, eyes tired, scared, and something else. Something softer. "Can we fix it?" John swallowed hard. "I don't know." She nodded. "But would you try? With us?" He looked down at his hands, still scraped, still scarred, and then up at her. He reached out and took her fingers, cold and shaking, into his own. "If there's even one wall standing, I'll build around it." She stepped forward, rested, her forehead against his. In the distance, the trees were turning white again. That morning, the townsfolk came. Mrs. Bailey from the bakery brought warm bread and 3 thermoses of coffee. The sheriff came too, not with papers, but with tools. A retired carpenter pulled up in an old Chevy, said nothing, just started unloading wood. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't need to. They saw what had been broken, and they knew what came next. It started with 1 nail. John drove it in just after sunrise, standing in the frame of the kitchen doorway, smoke-stained boards stacked behind him, frost still clinging to the steps. His hands were stiff, blistered, but they moved with purpose. The house wasn't gone. Not yet. By mid-morning, the gravel drive had filled with trucks. Mrs. Bailey came first, her arms full of cinnamon rolls and 3 mismatched thermoses of coffee. "You'll work better with sugar in you," she said, patting John's shoulder before he could speak. Sheriff Clay showed up with lumber. "Town funds got a little extra this month," he said. "Figured we could waste it on nails and goodwill." Then came Hank Mullins, the retired carpenter with hands like rope and a scowl that covered a heart too soft for his own good. He didn't talk, just started measuring. John handed him the tape without asking. Rachel watched from the porch steps, wrapped in her coat, Lily tucked beside her, Sam asleep in her lap. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Something in her had straightened since the fire, not hardened, rooted. John moved like a man waking up. For weeks he'd been living inside his own ruins. Grief, guilt, ghosts. But now, surrounded by the clang of tools and the sound of voices not asking why, only what next, he started to see differently. Not as a man who had failed again, but as a man who had stayed. By midday, the blackened cabinets were gone, the broken window frames stripped. The walls scrubbed down to wood that still remembered how to stand. John stood back, saw the place not as it had been, but as it could be. He imagined Sam drawing on the new floors, Lily sitting at the windowsill Rachel loved, Rachel planting, something outside, something lavender, something small but strong. He closed his eyes and let himself picture it, and for once he didn't feel fear follow. At lunch, Rachel brought out sandwiches wrapped in paper towels. She handed them to the men one by one, thanking each softly, deliberately. When she reached John, she hesitated. You haven't eaten, she said. He took the sandwich. Neither have you, she smiled. Then we're even. Lily climbed into his lap, uninvited but completely at ease. I'm drawing the new kitchen, she said, showing him a page of lines and boxes and hearts in every corner. Where's the stove? He asked. Right here, she pointed, next to the thank you counter. The what? Lily shrugged. It's where we say thank you for having a home. John didn't speak, but his arms closed gently around her. That evening, the last board was nailed into the new wall. It wasn't perfect. The wood didn't match. The seams weren't clean. But it stood, and that was enough. They lit the fire again, small, contained, and the scent of cedar filled the air. Rachel stood beside John as the light flickered across the new kitchen walls. I didn't think we'd have this, she said. John didn't respond right away. Then, neither did I. She looked at him. Do you believe in second chances? He kept his eyes on the flames. Not the way people talk about them. And the way you do? They're not given. They're built. Rachel stepped closer, her hand brushing his. I want to help build it, if you'll let me. He turned toward her. You already are. That night they sat at the table together, not just the four of them, the sheriff, Mrs. Bailey, Hank, a few neighbors who didn't say much, just passed the bread and poured the cider. The fire crackled. The house felt full. John caught Rachel's gaze across the table. She didn't say anything, just smiled. Not the polite one, not the tired one, the real one. And something in him softened again, like a muscle finally unclenched. After the guests left, the kids asleep, John and Rachel stood on the porch. Snow began to fall again. Light, whisper soft. John held 2 mugs of tea, passed one to her. You know, he said, this porch never had this many footprints before. Rachel looked down at the wet wood beneath their feet. Then let's keep them coming. John smiled barely, but it reached his eyes. The last thing he did that night was take the old stump by the shed and plant something beside it. A sapling, gifted by Hank, roots wrapped in burlap, branches bare but strong. He patted the soil down gently. Rachel watched. From the porch, a tree, she asked. He nodded. A promise. Spring didn't arrive all at once. It came like Rachel. Slowly, carefully, 1 foot at a time, as if testing whether the world would still hurt when touched. The snow melted in patches. The frozen ground gave way to mud, then grass. John started, leaving the windows open during the day, just a crack. The house smelled like pine and bread and occasionally, paint. The kitchen had color now. A warm cream Rachel picked out, said it made the light feel like morning even in the afternoon. John wasn't sure what that meant, but he liked how she said it. The lavender had survived the winter. A few green shoots pushed up near the porch, fragile but stubborn. So had they. On a Thursday afternoon, while the kids napped and the kettle hummed, Rachel walked out to the sapling behind the shed. John followed, carrying 2 small wooden signs he'd carved the week before. One read, Lily and Sam's tree. The other, smaller, simple. We stayed. He knelt to press them into the soil. Rachel watched him, her arms folded against the breeze. You sure about that wording? She asked with a small smile. He looked up. You'd rather I carved something poetic? No, she said, stepping closer. I like that it's plain. She reached down, brushing dirt off one of the roots with her thumb. This tree, it won't grow fast. I don't want it to, John said. They stood like that for a while, watching wind stir the branches, small, leafless still, but anchored. That evening, John cooked dinner. Nothing fancy. Grilled cheese, tomato soup, the kind of meal that said we made it to another night. Lily set the table with 4 mismatched plates. Sam lined up the spoons by size and declared the smallest one the most important. They ate by the fire. Rachel sat across from John, hair messy, socks mismatched, smile soft. You realize we've been here almost 3 months? She said. John nodded. You're practically locals. Rachel leaned back, mug in hand. I used to dream of leaving, starting over, going somewhere no one knew me. You did? No, she said. I ended up somewhere better. I ended up where someone saw me. John didn't speak right away. Then he said, I thought I'd used up all my chances. That after she died, I wasn't allowed to want anything else, or anyone else. He glanced at her. I was wrong. Rachel set her mug down. You didn't have to be brave for us, John. I wasn't. Then what were you? He took a breath. Just tired of being alone. Rachel reached across the table and took his hand. You're not. Later, after the kids were in bed, they sat on the porch beneath the soft April sky. John wrapped a blanket over both their shoulders. Rachel rested her head on his chest, his arm around her. The wind smelled like rain and soil and something new, trying to grow. They didn't need to talk. Everything that mattered was already understood. But just before they stood to go in, Rachel looked up at him. Can I ask something? Anything. Do you ever think about the future? John considered the question, then nodded. Sometimes. What do you see? He paused. I see you, and the kids, and a kitchen that smells like pie, a table with 4 chairs that never sit empty, and a tree, big enough for shade. Rachel smiled. No promises? She asked. He shook his head. No promises. Then softly, just this. I'll choose you again tomorrow, and the day after. And as long as we're both still, standing. She closed her eyes and whispered, That's enough. The next morning, Lily ran out to the tree and found her name carved deeper into the sign. Below it, in neat block letters, someone had added, Our family. And beside it, Rachel planted something new, a second sapling, smaller, more fragile. John didn't ask what it was. He just knelt beside her, pressed his fingers into the soil, and helped her plant it, together. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to, Boru. It's who stays, who chooses you day after day. If this story touched something quiet inside you, we hope you'll like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us. There are more stories waiting, soft ones, strong ones, just like this.